Let's be real. Lawsuits are no fun, but with Paulson & Nace, at least they are a little easier. With two DC-born partners, Paulson & Nace will fight for you the way only a Washingtonian could. Paulson & Nace handles medical malpractice, wrongful death, and other complex injury cases involving negligence. So if you have been hurt or lost a loved one because of someone else's mistake or negligence, call Paulson & Nace for a no-obligation consultation. Visit www.paulsonandnace.com or call 202-463-1999.
Today on CityCast DC, cherry blossoms are peaking early thanks to climate change, and there's a fight over DC's busiest airport. I'm here with CityCast's Priyanka Tilve and Julia Karen to sum up the latest news and laugh at some hilarious one-star reviews at the Jefferson Memorial. Today's Tuesday, March 19th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Priyanka, Julia, thank you for being here.
Hi, yeah, good to see you.
Hi, Bridget. Good to see you, too.
Thanks for being here. So it's March. I'm sniffling. My nose is running. That can only mean one thing, that spring is here, and that also means cherry blossoms. But Priyanka, what's going on with the cherry blossoms in DC this time of year?
Yeah, I feel like the allergies hit harder out of nowhere because we were supposed to have some more time, the cherry blossoms were not supposed to peak until March 23rd, yet here we are. It's March 19th, and 2 days ago, the National Park Service announced that we had hit peak bloom. And it's because of an unseasonably warm spring that we're having, They have always talked about how hard it is to predict when exactly peak bloom is going to hit, and it's because the weather can be kind of unpredictable in DC. We have our, what's it called, our false spring and our...
Full spring.
Full spring.
Full spring. Currently, we're at the pollinating, which means we are basically at almost real spring.
Yeah. It's not the earliest peak bloom ever, but we are inching towards it. The last few years, peak bloom's been getting earlier and earlier. The earliest recorded peak bloom was March 15th, 1990. So March 17th isn't too far behind that.
Wow.
Yeah. Are you all planning to go out and see the cherry blossoms? Do you brave the tidal basin or do you go elsewhere?
So on Sunday, I went with my mom and my dad and my cousin to Kenwood. I was staying at my parents' house over the weekend. Kenwood is a neighborhood in Bethesda. And we drove there. We parked the car. We took a nice little hour-long walk. I forgot to take my allergy medication, so within 30 minutes, my eyes were incredibly itchy. But that's okay, because they were very pretty. And it was way less crowded than the tidal basin tends to be. My brother sent us this really gorgeous photo. He went on a run around the tidal basin at golden hour on Sunday. And he sent, very classy shots of the Washington Monument, framed by the cherry blossoms, and the Jefferson Memorial, framed by the, it was very cute. It was very, very picturesque and very nice. So I had a very relaxing Sunday.
Sounds beautiful.
See, I don't really feel any strong urge to see them. I've seen them. I've done it. I've lived here for so long. I've done it quite a few times now. I love them. I love that for you, Julia. I love people who want to see them. I'm happy that they're there. My parents love to see them. I had dinner with my parents last night, and my dad is particular about peak bloom. So I'm always you could just go the day after. And he's like, no, it's peak bloom or nothing. So sometimes I get kind of roped into having to keep abreast of when peak bloom is so we can go. But myself personally, I feel like I've seen it. I've done it. I love it. I love it for other people, but I'm good.
I'm kind of like you, Bridget. I love the trees. I feel like you have fake cherry blossoms all over the city, and I'm perfectly happy to see those.
Y'all are haters. Wow.
I like it.
I'm not hating. I just value my personal space.
That's a good way to put it. I scroll the DC subreddit every couple days, and talk about haters. Somebody made a post that was so specific and petty. I was like, I could have written this, where they were complaining that during cherry blossom season, bars and restaurants have cherry flavored items, but cherry blossom flavored and cherry flavored are two different things. And so if
Yes,
you're
they
trying
are.
to celebrate cherry blossom season, why are you having cherry flavored things and not cherry blossom flavored things? This is the kind of pettiness that I enjoy.
Same here. I'm for it. I'm pro it. I also don't like how artificial cherry tastes. So way to push
Yeah.
back, DC. Love that for us.
I agree. Well, another part of this discussion is the climate change thing, right? Like the fact that peak bloom is moving earlier and earlier. There also are concerns about flooding and the impact that flooding has on the cherry blossoms. It's been a problem for a really long time. The cherry trees are meant to grow on really dry land and they need fresh water. But whenever the tidal basin floods, you end up with all of this like brackish water mixing in with the fresh water. And then that water flows all over the roots of the cherry trees, and salt, which is in brackish water, is really bad for like cherry tree soil. Like having salt in the soil can weaken and ultimately kill cherry trees. And we've seen this with our beloved Stumpy. Y'all know who Stumpy is?
Yes. Long live Stumpy, baby.
Yes.
For folks who don't know, who is Stumpy? What is Stumpy?
Yes. Stumpy is this adorable little tree on the tidal basin. So I'm just pulling up a picture so I can describe him in his full glory. He's like, he really does look like just like a stump, I suppose. I mean, he's tall, but it looks like a tree that was chopped off. And all you have left is like the trunk. And then there's one little like thin branch that veers off to the left that's got, I guess, what are supposed to be cherry blossoms on it, but they're so sparse and weak looking. Like, oh, Stumpy just like makes my heart ache.
I know. So are we going to like save Stumpy? Is that happening, or like what's happening in addition to this? Yeah.
Yeah, so what's happening with Stumpy and a bunch of other cherry trees along the tidal basin is that because of this flooding that's becoming more frequent and the impact that it has on cherry trees, and it is hurting them already, what the National Park Service has decided to do is remove 140 cherry trees that are around the tidal basin and then another 18 near West Potomac Park. They're going to remove the trees entirely and start this 3-year project to rehabilitate the crumbling seawalls in the area. So like NPS had built these seawalls to protect the trees, but they're falling apart. It's been too long, and the result is that the cherry trees are suffering the way Stumpy has suffered. And so they're just going to take these trees away, fix up the walls, and then ultimately they will replant way more trees. So like after the work's completed, they'll plant 455 trees, and 274 of those are cherry trees. So like to summarize, they're taking away 158 cherry trees, but then they will replant 274 cherry trees. So, you know, net positive in the end. And also this means that there will be stronger seawalls, and hopefully that means that the new cherry trees that are planted will be safer and stronger and not Stumpy. But the sad thing is that people are, you know, emotionally attached to Stumpy himself, and he will be no longer. What's going to happen with him is they're going to take some cuttings from Stumpy and create like genetic copies of him at the National Arboretum. And then if possible, they will replant some of those copies back on the tidal basin. But, you know, they're clones. It's not Stumpy himself. Stumpy himself will be no more.
But he'll live forever in our hearts.
He will. He'll live forever in our hearts. And actually, what's kind of cool is that all of the trees that they're cutting down are going to be turned into mulch and then spread across the mall. And so they will all kind of live on in the roots of living trees.
Aww.
They will help provide nutrients for trees to other trees for generations to come.
Quick question then. Because of this seawall stuff, does that mean that like we aren't going to have like a cherry blossom festival next year, potentially, if they're removing these trees and backing them up?
I think we still will. So like 140 cherry trees sounds like a lot. And, you know, I am a tree lover, so my heart goes out to every single one that's getting cut down. But there are in total 1,700 Yoshino cherry trees around the mall. And so we will still have a peak blossom next year. There will still be plenty of pink little flowers to go stare at, and I'm sure plenty of tourists to come and stare at them.
Well, speaking of tourists coming into DC, let's talk about what's happening with National Airport. Julia, take us through it.
Alrighty, so I don't know how many of you know this, but Reagan National Airport has limits on what can and can't fly out of there. So there's a current FAA rule that's been in place since 1986 that limits the number of flights that can go more than 1,250 miles. Y'all with me so far?
Yeah. Approximately how far is that?
DC to Austin is 1,316. So roughly like that amount. Anything
So
further
like half
than
the
about
country, kind of.
Yeah, basically anything further than about Austin is going to be a little bit out of reach with like a couple of exceptions. So like DC to Phoenix is almost 2,000 miles away.
Got it.
So the deal is that Reagan National Airport is limited to these flights that are 1,250 miles. Congress people are not exactly thrilled about this because if you remember and you're from, say, California or Alaska, that means that you have to fly into either Dulles or BWI, and National Airport is closer to the Hill as compared to Dulles and BWI. So there have been conversations to try and expand the number of offerings at National Airport. Basically, what some people are trying to do is add something like 10 flights that are over 1,250 miles, that magical little marker. So they can fly in, fly out, make it more convenient for people who come from, maybe like Hawaii or Alaska or further away. The 4 senators from Virginia and Maryland, so that's Chris Van Hollen, Ben Cardin, Tim Kaine, and Mark Warner, sent this letter to the Senate Commerce and House Transportation and Infrastructure Committees saying basically, don't add longer distance flights out of National Airport.
Wait, but why? It seems like it'd be so convenient for everyone.
So hypothetically, yes, it would be. But it will create some issues. So DCA is already wildly overburdened. DCA was created to accommodate basically 15 million passengers annually. Do people want to take guesses as to how many we're on pace to serve this year alone? Throw out a number.
I don't know, 30 mil?
Okay, Bridget?
I would say 20, 30.
Okay, so DCA is on pace to serve 25 million travelers this year.
Okay.
That's a 66% increase above DCA's capacity already. So they're already overburdened. The extra potential 10 million travelers that are happening right now, it already strains the airport's resources. And also DCA apparently has the 3rd worst cancellation rate among the country's busiest airports, and that was in 2022.
Yikes.
Yeah, so if they add more of these flights, it's projected to get worse.
So did those stats and numbers come from the letter that the senators sent, or are those from elsewhere?
From the letter that the senators sent.
Okay, so I gotta say, we have to, that
Yes.
source does infuse some question, right? For example, the 3rd worst cancellation rate in 2022. 2022, I mean, this was obviously an issue that airports across the country were struggling with, but I remember the cancellation rates being really bad that year because airports were coming out of the pandemic. They had lost so much staff.
Yep.
And they were struggling. And so obviously that was something all the airports dealt with. And the fact that DC was the 3rd worst is still meaningful then. But maybe we had higher staff outages or something. It's not necessarily a capacity problem. And it's been 2 years since. And then same with what DC's passenger capacity is and whether we are seriously outpacing that. We do need to take into account that these senators are going to try to make it sound as bad as possible.
Sure. And if you're wondering why they might want to make it sound as bad as possible, it's because they represent Baltimore-Washington International Airport and Dulles International Airport, which are...
That sounds like a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
That said, one of the things that they kind of harp on is that Dulles was created to handle and expand more of this overflow. It was built for this purpose. It's built on land that is meant to be expandable so it can take on more, and that way you have this 3 airport system that can handle the overflow, and they all kind of work together to make things work. One of the arguments from Tim Kaine, he's one of the senators from Virginia, he's basically said Dulles hasn't been able to reach its full potential because National is taking flights away from Dulles.
Why do I care if Dulles is not my kid at college? Why do I care that Dulles is reaching its full potential? What is explain to me why this is something I should be concerned about?
Because DCA is limited in the number of runways and actual flights that it can handle. Because it's technically on federal land, National Airport can't really like expand or grow in the way that Dulles can. So we do have an issue here, which is, yes, like if people want to fly more out of National, that means they have to run more planes more frequently. And in addition to that, that means more air traffic over the surrounding suburbs in Arlington and Alexandria. And we have talked about how airplane noise is like actually kind of detrimental. So you kind of have all of these things coming together in a way that make it, you know, so that people don't necessarily want DCA to expand, even though, like, for me personally, it would be way more convenient to fly out of DCA for some of these flights.
For sure. And I mean, like, the residents that are complaining about noise are loud, right? Like, we did that episode about residents near Dulles concerned. And it does sound like it would be it does sound like it would be really annoying to live next to an airport that, like, you moved in assuming that there'd be a certain amount of airport noise, and now all of a sudden there is like 3-4-fold what you'd planned on.
And it also drives down the cost of your house, right? So those people are not getting what they bought, essentially, which is a fair argument.
That episode really changed my mind because I went into it being like, well, you bought a house near an airport. What did you expect? I went out of it thinking, well, this really, you probably didn't expect this to be such a variable issue. Maybe you made an assessment based on the facts that you had, and now those facts are changing, and it actually does sound like it's kind of a problem. So really, that was really an episode that really changed my mind about how I was thinking of the issue.
For sure. Now, I know that we've kind of dumped on all these people being like, well, like, we don't want to expand stuff. There are people who are pro-expansion of DCA and getting rid of part of this rule so that a couple of flights can fly out to maybe Austin or something like that. Last year, Senator Raphael Warnock wanted more long-distance flights. He's from Georgia. The Capital Access Alliance, which is a group that includes Atlanta-based Delta Airlines and several tourism-related organizations, is also pushing for the change. Basically, this group says that the rule in the country is outdated and air traffic nationwide has increased by tenfold over the last 60 years. Basically, the current perimeter rule isn't fit for today's air travel ecosystem in Washington, D.C. So this is something that we're going to have to keep tabs on, and, like, it's not going away. This will continue to be an issue.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really stands out to me, and I remember thinking this the last time we talked about this as well, is that, like, every single stakeholder, every single vocal person on this story is, like, has such an intense stake in the game.
Yes.
So it's really hard to take any of their perspectives at face value, because it's like, this goes at the heart of your business, or this goes at the heart of your reelection campaign. And I am just skeptical. So I guess from a selfish personal standpoint, I want more flights, so I'm on that side. But I can see why people who live in the area are like, I don't want noise, and I'm on that side.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be made clear that I am also a stakeholder, and I don't want to go out to Dulles every time I have to take a flight. So, like, I am also a little bit biased here.
Yeah. Good luck to the powers that be.
Seriously.
Okay, so we're talking cherry blossoms, we're talking springtime, we're talking travel. That means tourists. Tourist season is sort of popping off in DC with spring. That means there's more and more people coming into DC and checking out our local monuments. And you know what? Not all of them are all that impressed.
Oh boy.
Here are some of the funniest one-star reviews of the Jefferson Memorial.
Boy, lay it on us.
I'm so
lay it
excited.
on us.
So one kind of theme I've noticed with these reviews is memorials to a person that are not a statue of that person, people being like, it doesn't even look like him. So one good one is not realistic. Thomas Jefferson was not made out of stone. He was made out of flesh and red stuff.
Red stuff?
Wait, so to be clear, these people want like an organ meat designed basically monument of Jefferson just standing there on the tidal basin. When the vultures go get at him?
Like that.
Oh.
I love that they couldn't come up with the word muscle or blood. I don't know what the red stuff is supposed to be.
Red stuff.
Blood, God. Okay, continue.
Another one just says, looks nothing like Jefferson, waste of money. Which, do you have to pay to see the Jefferson Memorial?
They probably mean taxpayer money, like waste to make it. But, like, come on.
No. Also, there's a statue of Jefferson in the memorial itself. Like, is that not realistic?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
fair,
know, dog.
Fair.
So apparently there is an issue with mold on the marble. So a lot of people are like calling that out. But one person said black mole growing on memorial instead of mold. So, you know, I think this person is trying to call out the mold issue, but I like that they said mole instead. This one is curious to me. It just says didn't go, 1 out of 5 stars.
Not worth the time and effort. Bye.
Didn't even see it.
Love that.
Credible.
Yeah. Love that. Oh my God.
And then my very favorite one, I dropped my phone and the screen broke on the marble. 1 out of 5 stars.
100% Jefferson's fault. Like,
Yes. I love that. Wow.
Oh man, this is my favorite bit. We should do this one more often.
I know.
If folks listening have like memorials or spots in DC they want us to round up some 1-star reviews of, let us know.
Yeah, please do. And if you haven't listened to our last episode on this where we talked about the Washington Monument 1-star reviews, Bridget found some real gems. So we'll link to that in the show notes too so you can check it out. It's so funny.
Priyanka, Julia, thank you so much for being here and breaking all of this down with us today.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
Thanks, Bridget.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, share it with your favorite hater of the Jefferson Memorial. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.